What's good, people? The boys are back. Episode 49 of the Victory and Vices podcast. Me, Rory Spooner, James Veck back again. All right, this episode is going to deviate a little bit from sort of our normal format, and some may say our normal criteria.
Yes.
Now, this is an episode me and Becky have been on about doing for
a couple of weeks, at least.
More than a couple of weeks, and probably more than a couple of months. It's really been just... It's been a case of timing, because what we wanted to do was we wanted to do it during an international break where there's no real football on and there's nothing for us to cover, and we can go into this subject in a bit of depth. Now, you've already clicked on the video, so you know what the title's about.
Mm-hmm.
Becky, do you want to start with your little disclaimer here, just for the people?
Yeah, I feel like we should probably just put a little softener out there, because people are going to come for us, right?
They always come for us anyway.
But
let them come again.
You know, some people might view this as a slightly sensitive topic, depending on your opinion.
Yeah, that is putting it mild.
So
putting it very mild.
So just wanted to sort of put a little disclaimer out there beforehand, just addressing two things. The first thing I wanted to address was to just please excuse us if at any point we use any incorrect terminology. We don't plan to. Try to be as accurate as possible.
We're not. We've a little education on it. We're not the most educated, but we're not the least educated. So we'll try and be as gentle in parts as possible.
We shall. We try to remain PC where we can.
To a degree.
And as I said, of course, we will try to be as accurate as possible. But if you find that in certain parts we are not, we do ask that you please focus more on the points that we are trying to make. Yes, rather than trying to just dig us out for maybe using a slightly different or slightly wrong word here and there.
I'd agree. Yeah, so that's your disclaimer.
So that was the first one. That was the first one. And the second one is that we are most likely going to be discussing either situations where athletes are involved, or maybe even in some cases specific athletes.
Correct, yeah, that's very true.
And I would also just like to note that when we are talking about these athletes, we are discussing whether certain situations are fair and not actually placing blame on individual people for competing in certain circumstances.
I'll have to see how I feel later down the line about it.
Feel fluffy about it. Obviously, any transgender athlete competing in sport, providing that they tick certain boxes, are allowed to compete.
That is
They're
correct.
allowed to do so, and we are
correct.
merely discussing the fairness of these current rules, regulations, and the situation as a whole.
Okay. Cool.
That's me done.
You done now, yeah?
Done.
All right, what a statement. Okay, I see.
Gotta cover our backs, you know?
Yeah, I know. Look, this is what I'm going to say, right? Now, everybody deserves to live with dignity and respect, but we do live in a very cruel world. Now, there seems to be a need for parameters in place for predominantly female athletes, for their competition and for their safety. And there's essentially two arguments, or there's two sides to this coin. Now, the first side of the coin is female sport needs to be protected.
Okay.
That's what a lot of people will say. The second side of that coin is gender identification is the trump card. That is the most important thing for people. It surpasses sport. It's sort of on a human level. They say, fuck the sport. This is who I am as a person, okay? So there's arguments to be had on both sides, and Lord knows we could debate this all day.
I think that would be a common theme as well. I thought this whole thing, there'll be two sides.
You're either on one side or the other, right? Yeah. This is one of those subjects where there is absolutely no middle ground. There is no middle ground at all. You are either on this side or you are on this side. Yeah. Now, me and Becky, as I say, we've been going over this for a while, and we've sort of got a few examples. We've got some questions we're going to ask each other. Feel free to interact with us in the comments as well. Let us know your opinions, because, again, your opinions are very important to us. We want to maybe learn a bit more about the subject. We want to hear your news, your views, and everything in between. Now, where should we start with this, bro? What is the crux of the issue initially?
Do you think we should just outline what the main issue is?
Let's outline the main issue for everybody watching.
Okay, so critics and people will say that it is unfair to have a transgender female athlete, which is the main part of the problem more so than the other way around, right?
Correct, yeah.
So they'll say it's unfair to have a transgender female woman compete. Say female woman. Female.
Immediately we fuck this up, right? So let's just draw a line under that. We are going to fuck this up multiple times, right?
Yeah. So having a trans woman competing, okay, in sport.
I said so, a female woman. Someone is looking at this camera right now and they're thinking, fuck that guy.
With a biologically male body, okay,
Okay.
due to the unfair physical advantage they may have. For the most part, we'll be discussing transgender females. So I have kind of just sort of put it a bit differently. I said the problem defined, okay, is do transgender females who lower their testosterone levels into the female range, as required by current policy, continue to have performance advantages over biological women?
We've kind of opened Pandora's box a little bit, haven't we? Because society in general, right, is constantly evolving, it's constantly developing, and we're at the stage now where we can't really turn back. You know, the olden days have gone. We kind of have to try and adapt to the newer days. There's going to be a struggle amongst this generation to do so. It may be a little easier for the generation after us because, again, as each generation comes along, they're generally a little more evolved, a little more accepting, and a little more tolerant. I mean, I'm gonna start off by saying this. If you are trans, if you are gender fluid, if you are vegan, if you are Martian, I don't particularly care. God bless you. Live your best life. There's no hate in my heart for anyone. Now, do I agree with trans athletes competing in certain sporting categories? I'm gonna have to say no. Now, I'm gonna start off by saying that. Now, I say that to say this. In the interest of fairness. Now, fairness is a topic we could debate all day, right? True. It's a subject we could go over non-stop. In the interest of fairness, if I am a female athlete and I have worked my entire adult life and a lot of my youth as well to get to the stage I'm at now, and I'm competing for, we'll say, a gold medal or world title. I am top of my field. I'm favourite to win that category. I'm favourite to win that title. This is everything I've dreamt of. It's my first thought when I wake up. It's my last thought before I go to bed. It completely consumes me. If I am competing then against a male that has transitioned into a female, for example, if I am competing against that person, okay, because we won't use, I'm competing against that person has then been through puberty. They have significant advantages that men have. Now, again, there's an argument out there, having seen many podcasts, that there's a lot of people that will say there are no physical differences between men and women. They don't exist. We are all born equal. I'm going to beg to differ and say that's bullshit.
It is bullshit, yes.
That is bullshit. Now, the reason men are so successful at sport is because they are built for that. Now, there's people like Serena Williams who they dominate female sports. She's incredible, by the way, what she does. Right? We all salute Serena and athletes like her. But if you put Serena in against a man, and I believe there was an or some type of game where Serena played a male. I haven't got it to hand, but again, I'll try and find an article on it to bring it up. Serena got absolutely pumped.
Yeah, I saw something, and it equated to, I think, the male tennis player that's ranked 1,500th in the world or 2,000th in the world, or of a higher level than Serena Williams. Yeah,
so Serena got beat. Now, I feel like it's very unfair for these women that sacrifice so much to then have a person who is transgender come in and steal that crown from them and just take it away like that. And people go, well, that's life, it's society, now you've got to accept it. I don't feel like that should be the case. I feel like these women deserve a fair shot. And I feel like in certain more physical sports, maybe, again, we've a rugby example I'll bring up later, but women's safety is an issue because you have a lot of guys, again, who've gone through puberty. They're incredibly fast, they're incredibly strong, they're full-grown men. Physically, they're very different to a lot of these women. And yes, okay, if you want to be addressed as a woman, fair enough, no problem. We can't take away from the fact that you were once a full-grown man. That's an issue for women's safety. If I had a girlfriend or wife that played a sport like that where she could be in danger, I would have a problem with that. If I had a daughter that was playing those sports, I would have a problem with that. Now, that's not to some people's liking, and that's not me saying I hate transgender people. I have no real preference. If that's, like I said, if that's how you want to live your life, God bless. I wish you all the success in the world. But we do have to have parameters in place. Would you say that's a fair shout?
Yeah, I agree.
It's a difficult one, and again, there's people probably watching this. It's already divided opinion, right? They're like, well, fuck you. They should be able to do what they want. And there's other people that are going, you know what? I completely agree with you. And truthfully, by the end of this, we won't have an answer because we don't have the answers. The governing bodies out there, they don't have
There's
the
not
answers.
currently an answer.
I don't know if there will ever be an answer, but it's good dialogue to have.
Yeah. Well, just to kind of play devil's advocate to what you've mentioned there, right?
Okay.
So there are people, so if I'm going to sort of just take up, just for argument's sake, the opposing side to this, there are people that will say, well, there are regulations and there are rules that these athletes that are transitioning from male to female are abiding by, and boxes that they are ticking, namely the levels of testosterone that circulate within their body, right?
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of people that are saying that in reducing these levels of testosterone down to a certain point, now I don't know the exact metric, but it has to be under 10, and it says NMOL/L, okay? And it has to be...
Is that nanomole?
Yes, I think that's what it might be.
I done my research.
Okay. Under that for 12 months consecutively, right?
Okay.
And if you do that, so if you have your level of testosterone reduced to the point where you're under that for 12 months, then as far as I'm aware, you are signed off and allowed to compete. Obviously, the rest of the transition has to be, done exactly as it should be. But in terms of testosterone, if you're below that for a 12-month period, then you are signed off that, and they are saying that
you're fit to compete.
Yeah, and physically, you are no longer possessing any distinct physical advantage compared to any of the female competitors you'll be lining up against. That is what's being said.
Okay.
There are other and you touched upon physical sports, maybe even combat sports, right?
Yeah, combat sports. Very true.
So just got a very good article sort of supports some of the stuff I'm saying. But there's some people saying that there are sports where the advantage never disappears.
We'll try and bring this up as well on the podcast, just so you can have a little look at the article while we're talking as well.
So a lot of examples I've been reading are saying that it's all well and good to have for athletes that are competing in running or cycling, for example, okay? Where one can attempt to argue that the advantages will disappear once testosterone is lowered, okay? But we also have sports such as sort of rugby, MMA, sort of even basketball, like Aussie rules, all of that, right? So you mentioned there being like a welfare issue and things like that. So it isn't just down to sort of the testosterone level, because lowering testosterone may reduce hemoglobin, muscle mass, strength, power, things like that, okay? But it doesn't change the skeleton.
No, that's very true.
It doesn't. It's not changing a body types. It's not changing the size or the bulk of a person or their span or their stride length, all that sort of thing, right? So, so there's one argument that says lowering testosterone means that you're physically no more capable than let's say a woman that's born a woman, right? To be correct. But then the opposing argument is that it's not taking those things into consideration and that you are still at a distinct physical advantage.
There's people that will agree with that.
Yeah.
And there's people that will disagree with it. Like I said, it's a minefield. It really is an absolute minefield. And as time develops and as time goes on, it's not going to get any easier to make those decisions. Just a quick example, you talk about testosterone levels in athletes. Caster Semenya. Now, you may have seen Caster. Incredibly gifted female athlete. Now, she is a cisgender woman at birth, so she's biologically born a woman, but she has incredibly high levels of testosterone in her body.
So slightly different.
Yeah, slightly different, but I mean,
same.
It's slightly different but the same. Yeah. It's a part of the actual minefield itself. Now, in terms of Semenya, I'm just reading here now, and again, I'll try and put the article up so you can all have a look. Basically said Semenya had been barred from competing and subjected to sex tests because she doesn't conform to preconceived notions about femininity, and basically they were saying to her, your testosterone is too high. Now, for me, I completely disagree with that because she is born a woman. Now, if the testosterone levels in her body are that high, that's fine with me. I mean, she's born a woman. I don't see the issue. But again, there are people now on the other side that go, okay, well, we don't want that. We want to level that playing field and lower her testosterone.
This is where it gets messy now, right?
It's very messy.
And you mentioned that there may not really be an answer where we ever get a closed answer, and probably the answer to that is no, right? Because you start sort of having people complaining about her testosterone levels. Now, the testosterone levels in general is a very interesting topic, because when we're reducing the levels of testosterone in a trans athlete, for example, now it's not the same every time, right? From person to person,
It's not consistent.
It's not consistent.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
To what percentage drop off you get from having your your testosterone levels reduced is not the same per person. So, it's very difficult to say, oh, well, you make the transition, okay, to a female athlete, we'll reduce your level of testosterone, and you're going to drop off by 10%.
Because you just
right?
don't know.
And then saying that by dropping off that 10%, we then retest you. Your levels now are going to be, completely on par with a woman. That's not how it works, right? With one person, you can reduce testosterone, it can drop by 3%. The next person, it could be 15%, because it depends on the individual, and it also depends on what level they're at as a potential athlete, as a male, right? So if you're a male athlete, that's say semi-elite, right? You're not at the pinnacle of your sport.
Yeah.
You're earning maybe okay money to get by and make a living, but say it's something like sprinting, or even tennis. You're not nowhere near the top, but you're good, right?
Yeah.
So then you are still a cut above the best female athlete, okay, in that respect.
More than likely, yeah. No,
Yeah.
more than likely, it's very true.
And then you make the transition, and then you reduce your levels of testosterone, and you only drop off 3 or 4%. You are still going to dominate that female field, right? But the problem that we have, the huge problem, is that you can't control it, and it's not the same. It's too inconsistent. So that, I don't really know what the answer is.
I'd be damned if I do. But what I know is this: Caster Semenya, if we didn't have this whole transgender issue, right? Do you think they'd honestly be asking her to take testosterone suppressors? Because that's who she is. She's born a woman. It's not her fault that she's got that in her body. She's biologically born a woman. I don't see the issue myself. That's just who she is. If that makes her naturally faster than everyone else, that's fine. Now, if that's somebody who's transitioned from a man to a woman and gone through puberty, I get where the issue is there. I get why someone like Caster, for example, would be like, well, hang on. Yes, I do have high levels of testosterone in my body, but I'm biologically born a woman. I've worked for this all my life. If somebody was to then, as you say, maybe be the 300th best sprinter in the world, come and beat her, that's a problem. Yeah. We now have a problem in terms of competition. It is a real issue.
I mean, I'm more of the opinion that if you were genetically born with like high testosterone levels or something that gives you a genetic edge or an advantage, but it has come from birth, then I don't think there's a huge deal you can do to argue about that. That's just the way that it is, right? Some people are genetically born with better attributes than other people, right?
That's very true, yeah. Well, that's life. Some of us are good at math, some of us are good at running, other people can cook, other people can do gardening. It's like different things you're good at. You
were born, right, with, let's say, you were not born, rather, with the attributes to be a basketball player.
That's a fact.
Right? There is, I'm not, hugely into my basketball, but I know pretty damn sure that, what's your height?
I don't know, on a good day, maybe 5'8".
How many NBA players or people that make it in the NBA are 5'8" or shorter? There's probably not that many, is there?
I don't know the smallest NBA player.
Or the better ones are all of a certain height and stature.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, it's very true.
And I'm never going to be a jockey.
No, that's true, yeah.
Right? So, to a certain extent...
Well, not in this world, but the next world. I mean, the next generation, they may have you riding horses all day long.
You never know, right?
You never know.
So, sometimes you are born genetically suited or unsuited to certain sports, right? Or you might be born with something. I've heard of athletes within like weightlifting or CrossFit even that genetically have better bone density and muscle density, which means that their body is just more or better genetically programmed to, or better conditioned to certain sports.
Well, going back to what you're saying, and again, might be a sore subject for some people, especially a very pale man like myself talking about it, but the NFL, the large majority of the players in the NFL have huge bone density.
Yeah.
And they're absolutely massive, and similar with the NBA, but that stems from slavery.
Yeah.
And that stems from breeding slaves together to get the biggest slaves. And then generations upon generations later, you have these huge men that are just bred for sport and bred for competition. So it's like you said, it is genetics.
And so to sort of go, the point I was making was I don't have really much of an issue, if any issue, of that side of it.
No, same.
But I do potentially take issue with there being a gender transition, and it's mainly a male transition into a female sport, and it being unfair. So I agree with you on that respect. Okay. But it is just so difficult and I'm sure we'll touch upon this anyway. Because if you look at their argument, right? So I've been watching a lot of sort of YouTube clips, reading a lot of articles, watching a lot of stuff, right? And if you ask them sort of what's their argument, okay, about why it should be allowed, you hear a lot of stuff about gender fluidity. I watched a 10-minute episode on one professor saying that gender fluidity is being accepted in all walks of life, sort of in education, in the workplace, and this, blah, blah.
Excellent point. Sorry to cut you off, because I have a very good question I want to ask you, and a lot of people at home give me your answer to this as well, right? So, gender fluidity, in whether you work in an office or whether you work in any sector, really, it's becoming more and more relevant. Now, this is an interesting question, and it somehow just popped into my head last night because me and you were sort of WhatsApping and we were talking about it. Let's say I'm a Premier League footballer. Okay. Now, I'm a Premier League footballer, but I'm gender fluid. Now, I don't identify with any gender. Does that mean then I can play in both the men and the women's league? So this season, I'm going to go play Premier League football. But next season, I'm going to go and play football in America in the top women's league. But then after that, I'm going to come back and I'm going to play back in La Liga. And then I may go and play in the Spanish women's league. Does my gender fluidity allow that?
The first question I have is, are you not required to identify at all?
Well, I mean, this is how... Well, when the way society develops, could it potentially get to that stage where you might not even have to transition into a man or a woman?
There is that possibility. But I don't see a huge problem in that in terms of if you're going to...
Oh, I see plenty of issues arising.
Well, I mean, in terms of if you're going to not identify, right, and you're going to choose one season, one the next, you'd still have to be of... It's difficult. You'd have to be of a certain ability to be selected for whatever one you choose anyway, right?
But you may be a top player and you may go, okay, or you may even be an okay player and you may go, you know what, this year I identify with this league. Now I have a stronger identity with this league. It's a can of worms that is there to be opened.
It would then, and like I said earlier, it comes back around to the same points currently. That then comes back to, are they ticking the potential boxes of eligibility in terms of testosterone levels and all those sort of things? It'll always come back to that, right? In terms of, they're saying, well, if you're a male and you're now going to not identify, or you're now identifying as a female, okay, that's fine. Well, then you need to tick boxes, and you need to pass certain tests. You need to show that the what's going on in your body is below a certain level.
Now,
it keeps coming back to that.
Going back to what you're saying there, as me and Becky were talking about beforehand, a lot of this is going to end up in the courts. Yes. And very similar with that situation, someone will just pull the discrimination card and say, I'm being discriminated against, I should be able to play in both leagues. And again, this is why I feel like we need to have parameters in place. Not everybody agrees with what I'll say, and that's fine. I'm okay with it. I'm open to dialogue about it. But it's a very tricky situation. Yeah. Now, going back to what we were saying about the interest of fairness. Now, I have a little article here. I can't pronounce the girl's name, so I'm very sorry initially about that. But she is an 18-year-old Samoan. Okay. Now, she's a weightlifting champion. Now, she basically, to quote the article, because again, I'll try and put it up here, was shy and hopeless as a child. She's still very young now, but she's shy and hopeless. I think I know about this person. Now, she was chosen to be the flag bearer at the Pacific Games. She missed out on 2 gold medals to 41-year-old Laurel Hubbard, who looks set to be one of the biggest stories of Tokyo 2020. Yeah. Now, Hubbard is a transgender athlete who, as a male named Gavin, didn't make any type of noise on the international stage until she, see how I got that right?
Yeah.
Until she became a woman in her mid-30s. So she transitioned from a man to a woman in her mid-30s. The girl that has had the horrendous upbringing, it says here, she's a victim of sexual violence. She had to she sought refuge at a victim support group, where that's where she began weightlifting. So this girl, going back to what I'm saying, has sacrificed everything. She had this horrendous start in life. She's found her lane. This could be her chance to actually be in the history books. Like, a girl like that making history, she'll be known throughout the ages, and all of a sudden, somebody who's transgender comes along and goes, I'll take that, thank you very much. Bear in mind, now Laurel, who used to be Gavin, has gone through puberty, is a fully developed man, has been a man for the best part of 30 years, and a woman for a very short period of time, and has now gone and taken over. So in the interest of fairness, I want people's opinion. Do you think that's fair? Again, we're more than willing to listen to both arguments. Some people think it is, some people think it isn't. Me personally, I don't think that's fair.
No, and especially in an example such as this one, okay?
Okay.
I agree with you massively.
Bring some receipts, bro. Let's see it.
The reason being is because, like I touched upon earlier, there are sports such as running or cycling, and we mentioned combat sports that involve a lot more physicality than others, such as weightlifting. Okay. Now, in this one, for example, just looking at Laurel Hubbard now, previously Gavin. Okay. And I read something earlier about Laurel, and I can't remember the exact wording on it, but there was a massive backlash about it, right?
There was a huge backlash, actually. Yeah,
and
very big.
When she was quizzed about it, or basically what people were saying about how it was wrong, she won the gold medal, she was agreeing with them, not instead of just to get like people off her back. She was literally just saying, no, I didn't deserve it, it didn't happen, right? Just because of the backlash she faced on social media, the criticisms, etc. Right? So in that scenario, 100% that I see it being a much larger issue than what it is in, say, for a runner, for example. Yeah. Because this is where the physical advantages of being a male and going through puberty and all those kind of things, this is where it's at its biggest advantage, yeah?
Correct.
But it's an absolute minefield. I agree totally on that part, more so than any other. A sport like a weightlifting or something like a CrossFit or something like a rugby, NFL, MMA, boxing, those are the real dangers.
There's some serious dangers, very big dangers. What we'll do, me and Becky still got loads to go over. We'll go to a quick interval. If this is your first time watching us, add us up on the social media platforms. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel as well. We will be back in a couple of seconds, and we are going to keep going with what we've got. Stay tuned. We back. Okay.
Indeed.
Right. Trying to come to some logical conclusions, shall we say. Some ideas that could maybe improve the world and make us all feel a little happier. We're not going to get the answer tonight, but we'll try. Me and Becky, the only logical thing we could really come up with is what we would call a trans games. Now,
yes, yeah.
You let the people know your views on a trans game, because when we were talking about it before we came on air, you made some very logical points about it. So explain to the people your opinion on a trans games.
Well, why I think there should be a trans games.
Why, and the good, the bad, the ugly, everything in between.
Yeah, so you touch upon how it's very difficult to get an answer, to get the right answer, or if there is a right answer. And obviously we've already discussed the difficulties with trying to sort of establish any consistency with people transitioning. So it seems that, or at least currently, the only real logical explanation would be a trans games, right? Now, I don't know how well that would work in every sport, because some sports are small enough in themselves
and some sports are team sports, so there's not enough people to compete.
So, would a trans games or a trans category of every sport work? Probably not, but it would be a place to start, right?
I think to be honest with you, just sorry to cut you off, bro. I think that is an excellent starting point. I think it's an excellent starting point.
Now, I'll come on to the argument of that in just a second.
Okay.
But I believe that would be a good place to start. A trans sort of category where you kind of remove all criticisms, all people's gripes with it, because you have a category where all males that have transitioned to females will participate in that trans games or a trans sort of category, right? In their respective sport.
Yeah.
Now, there will be people that will say, again, they'll hit a discrimination card, right?
Oh, I believe they probably played that a few times already during this episode.
And it'll come up again. I'm a human being, and I should be allowed to compete against other human beings, right? So yes, you will have those issues, but that aside, until they can collect, and you know, we're talking hypothetically. I said it's due, obviously off air. Unless you can collect enough data, and you would need to have a scenario like, for example, you test people prior to transition and after transition, and have enough of a big enough pool, where you can see how thousands of people, how much their testosterone levels have changed, in order to get some sort of consistent data,
Yeah.
And that would take so many people, and then you'd have to get people to consent to that. And you mentioned about how there'll be sort of more people disagreeing, saying that we're not guinea pigs, we shouldn't be treated like that. But that's the kind of thing that you would need, right?
Well, look, I mean, that's the first thing people are going to say, is they're going to be like, why are you testing us? Yeah. What's so different about us?
Unless you can do what I was alluding to there and get enough data to show that when someone transitions, their testosterone levels will change by this much, which will mean that in a female field of competitors, unless you can do that, then I don't see any other possible outcome than some kind of trans games or a trans category in sport.
And again, to the people at home, if you have any ideas about how it should work, let us know. We'd love to know. We really would, because we've racked our brains, and so that's the one thing we can come up with. What I will say about this situation, because I'll come on to safety in a moment as well. Do you know the biggest drug out there right now in the world?
Biggest drug? Go on.
Take a guess.
Marijuana?
Maybe for some. Maybe it isn't. Take another guess. Go on.
All the drugs coming to mind.
Have a guess. Keep guessing. Go on. Keep guessing.
Crack cocaine.
Crack is whack, but for some people, they want it back. Like, do you mean they like it? No, but on a serious note, the biggest drug in the world right now is attention. And you weren't expecting that, were you? You were going to make me so I was going to make you list every... I was like, heroin. I was going to make you list every single drug, both over-the-counter and not over-the-counter. We'd have been here a while, so I can't cut you off. Right, so, attention is the biggest drug in the world right now.
Yeah.
We all know this, right? We've all got Instagram, we've all got Facebook, we've all got Twitter. We know what it's about. People do crazy shit for attention.
It's true.
We'd be naive to think that in any level of sport, there are people out there that don't want attention. We compete primarily because we want attention. We want affection. We want people to embrace us.
Mm-hmm.
With transgender athletes, we'd be very naive to sit here and think that certain athletes, now I'm not going to say all athletes, the certain athletes are doing it for the right reasons. Now, there may be people out there that firmly believe, I was born a woman and I'm in the wrong body. And if that's how you feel, God bless. As I say, more power to you. I hope that the cards you've dealt, you can change the hand and you can make life work for you. But we'd be very naive to sit here and think that there are people out there who don't just want to win. There's people out there who just want to win. Right? There's people out there who they'll be the 250th best weightlifter in the world. But they know that by going, I'm going to transition into a woman now, they've no real desire to be a woman. They've no real desire to help the trans cause. But what they want is a gold medal. What they want is sponsorship money. What they want is financial gain and attention and likes and loves and retweets and multiple comments, and then them being an icon of their generation. Not everybody is doing it for the right reason. And again, people are going to slander me for it. not everybody is. And you would be very naive to sit there and think
100%,
everybody is doing it. Because in sport, we have performance-enhancing drugs, we have match fixing, we have footballers, for example, who will dive all over the shop, right, to get a penalty. You would be very naive to think that people won't do whatever it takes to win.
Well, it's never been a level playing field anyway, and it never will be. And this is just another potential example of that. The extreme but potentially realistic scenario in this is that, there could very well be, like you're pointing out, a male athlete who is, like you said, the 250th or 500th or whatever number, they're just relatively good within their field, their sport, that will look at the current rules and regulations of, becoming a transgender athlete, looking at that and thinking, I can transition, okay?
I can make this work for me.
Female sport, and I can be the best in that sport, and I can win X amount. I can generate so and so amount of money and finance.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you might be a male sprinter, for example, earning a little bit of coin, all of a sudden you become the top female sprinter. You've got Nike after you, you've got Adidas after you, you've got Under Armour after you, you've got Reebok after you. All the headlines are yours. You look at a Caitlyn Jenner. Caitlyn Jenner won, I think, an ESPY a while back for, I don't know if it was Woman of the Year or something. She'd barely been a woman 6 months. So there is huge gain for some people.
What you could also have to go one step further is that they could transition into a female athlete, win however many trophies, accolades, sponsorships, finance they want, and then turn around in a couple of years and say, I'm not identifying as a female athlete anymore.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's it.
I'm going to identify as a male again.
Well, this is the issue we have. Question for you people at home, and question for you as well. Out of 1,000 people, or 1,000 men, because I'm going to specifically say men, okay, out of 1,000 men, how many of those men would cut their dick off for Olympic gold? How many do you reckon would say, you know what, I crave that type of attention?
From silver?
Well, look, I mean, you don't win silver, you lose gold. People are going to go the extra length. Now, I would say very few people, but I can guarantee 1 or 2 would.
There'll be some. I was just about to say, it's an extreme thing to do, but, we talked a lot about people that have worked all their lives and have given up and sacrificed things, in order to achieve that ultimate goal. So there would be a couple of people at least.
Hands down, there would be a couple of people who would do that. Like I said, the biggest drug in this world right now is attention. And people cannot get enough of it. If you said to someone, you can cut your dick off and you can get Olympic gold and you can be on the front page of everything, you could ask 1,000 men. 999 would say no, but I know there's one guy that would say yes.
And just to address as well, we've been speaking a lot about male to female gender transitions. The reason for, just in case anybody is wondering, why we haven't really gone into, or if not any depth on females transitioning to men and going into male sport, because that is happening also.
That is happening.
And it is happening, just as commonly. But as some of you might be able to work out with that, we aren't really coming across very many, if any, issues with there being any sort of unfairness, shall we say? No,
and again, that's not. Look, it seems every time I turn a corner in this argument, the answer is science. Science will show. And again, there's people out there that will dispute this, that men are better athletes than women.
Yeah.
Now, if you were born a woman, you could be the top, right? You could be the top female soccer player in the world. You could be a Megan Rapinoe. You could transition into a man. You will not make the grade at a League 2 level. You may not even make it on the bench there. So that is why this is very much a one-way street.
Though, also, I ask you a question.
Yeah, feel free.
Just to shed a little bit of light before we obviously bring it all to a close. Females transitioning into male sport, I've been reading on a couple of examples where, because of their physical disadvantage that they're at in many cases, which we know, and we've drawn a lot of attention to, there are many cases now where they are having where they're actually putting more testosterone and hormones into their body. Did you know that?
To make them more competitive.
Yes, exactly.
No, I didn't know that.
So sort of increase the testosterone levels, because obviously they're a lot lower than the male athlete, for example.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that side of it?
I mean, from a competition standpoint, I don't envisage any of those females making a dent in male sport in history. But what I do worry about is their safety.
Yeah.
Because physically, you're going to get bombarded.
So just a random scenario, and this hasn't happened yet, and it may very well not happen. If you're a male athlete who's at the top of your sport or top of your field, and a female transitions over to a male, comes into your sport,
Okay.
And is deemed that their testosterone levels are far below what yours are and what an average male athletes are, and they're having stuff done to increase that level. What if they were then to beat you to a podium spot or to a title?
If they were to beat me with the reduced testosterone or the advanced testosterone?
So they are being given increased testosterone.
Then I would have a problem with that.
So you'd have a problem on the flip side.
I would have a problem with that, yeah. Because again, same situation, I could have sacrificed everything. Absolutely left it all on the field. And someone comes and takes it.
You'd have someone saying, well, they would say, you have a lot of people arguing that they're at a disadvantage genetically.
This is why there's a need for me for trans games with certain events. That's why. Yeah. I think that's why there is.
Because there are people who say, well, hang on a second, they're a female, so they're physically inferior, right? So that if they're going to transition into a male sport, then something needs to be done to bring them on par.
True.
And to an extent, I'm like, okay, I understand that.
But what I will say is,
but then it has to be regulated.
It has to be regulated. But very few female athletes that transition into men are going to make. They'll make very little difference. The Serena Williams example is perfect. She is an athletic specimen for female. She is incredible, and she couldn't touch male tennis players. She couldn't. Now, one of my main concerns I wanted to bring up, and this is very close to home, you might not have seen this article actually, but the main concern, as I just brought up now, is safety. Safety is paramount. Like I said, if there's any females that I was related to or I was involved with that were playing sport, I would want to make sure that first and foremost, they're in a competitive environment that is safe. I think that's the premise of all sport. A lot of people play sport for their leisure, they play for entertainment, some people play for competition, some people, they play for fitness. Most importantly is that when you do it, you're safe. Now, there is an article on the BBC website, which again, I'll try and link to this. And again, you may not have seen this. It's about a man who transitioned into a woman, and he's a female rugby player. Now, there's an article about Kelly Morgan. Now, it says Kelly Morgan is a trailblazer. Kelly was born Nicholas Gareth Morgan, but then transitioned into a female. Now, Kelly's playing rugby. Kelly's nickname is The Beast because Kelly is so big. And one of the articles, it says here, at nearly 6 feet, she stands out among her teammates. And club captain Jessica Minty Madley, or Madley, I beg your pardon on the pronunciation, recounts a time she folded an opponent like a deck chair. I don't even find that funny, bro. Like, because if that's my missus, or that's my auntie, or that's my sister, or that's my mother,
just the terminology, sorry.
She folded him like a deck chair. You are people, right, who could be seriously hurt. Like, seriously hurt. It's actually fucking ridiculous to let a man of that size play against women. What's he going to do? Just hand everyone off every time he gets the ball? Well, at what stage do we put parameters in place? Does said person have to score 5 or 6 tries a game? Does he have to actually break someone's neck before we then go, okay, you know what, this is unacceptable?
Yeah, I mean, to an extent I agree, but even in male rugby, you do come across specimens of males that are, like, a lot bigger than other.
You do, and that's fine. But they're born a man.
Yeah,
and the male body again physically would be designed to compete against the male body. That's my opinion.
Yeah, because there are people who say, well, for example, Shane Williams could have played in the same rugby pitch as Jonah Lomu.
That's very true. But at the same time, if you put Shane Williams on a female pitch, it's game over. For a lot of people, there might be Americans or other people who don't know who Shane Williams is. Shane Williams was a Welsh rugby player. He was very small in terms of his build, but he excelled against the best. So if you do want to go away and watch some videos about him, feel free to do so, because he's incredible at what he does. Just one other article I wanted to bring up, and it'll be the last article that I bring up, and it's very interesting. Again, it goes back to weightlifting. Now, Mary Gregory is a weightlifter. And you can go on Mary's Instagram profile if you want. It's called 75 Mary Lifts, and Mary won, I think it was 9 competitions out of 9. and people were like, oh my god, this is incredible. And the issue now is that she's basically been stripped of her titles. And that, again, that decision could have huge ramifications for transgender athletes. Now, it says here, our rules and the basis of separating genders for competition are based on psychological classification rather than identification. I don't know what that means. I don't have a fuck. I read 4 or 5 times I have read that, and I do not know. This is why there is a need for a trans games, in my eyes. Because you've got trans athletes now that are getting stripped of medals. You've got people that are potentially getting hurt. There's too much confusion, and I don't have a lot of confidence in the process. It's a mess. As we said, it's a minefield. But that was just the last article I wanted to bring up. Again, I'll try and link it to this, and you can always go away and find it on on Google, or I'm assuming there's other YouTube videos about it as well. But just a few questions I wanted to pose to you very quickly. Now, Megan Rapinoe and Alex Morgan are the 2 standout stars. They have, again, sacrificed absolutely everything. They've worked hard. They're the best in their field. What if a Christian Pulisic decided he was going to transition into a female? He said, you know what, I've been a female all my life. This is how I feel now. I want to play for the women's national team. Do you think they would ever have the same career with him in the side? Because they are icons. They're at the ESPY Awards. They are on TV. They have sponsorship deals. They're getting paid well. They've earned a great living. If he transitioned into a female and took their place, do you think they'd have ever existed?
Would it be in a team sport? When you say take their place, do you mean play alongside?
No, I mean take their place.
Take one of their places.
Yeah, take one. I mean, look, Christian Pulisic, he's a forward. You then have Alex Morgan, who is a forward. Megan Rapinoe, who is a forward as well. They're not going to get, if he's scoring 50, 60 goals a season, they're not going to take his place.
I mean, it would depend on how it's received, right, by the general population. In terms of if Christian Pulisic makes the transition and starts doing just that, I think there would be more of a backlash like there is in other sports.
Well, I mean, this is where it gets messy, because you have people like Megan Rapinoe and Alex Morgan. They're advocates for transgender people and for lesbian people and gay people, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But if a transgender female takes one of their jobs, do you have the same energy about it? Are you going to be okay with it? If he limits your playing time to the point where you're playing 5 or 10 minutes, or you're not playing at all and you're not in the squad, you're deemed surplus to requirements, that history that you've made now doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It ceases to exist. It never happens. Your chapter in history is then gone. And again, it's an issue that may occur later down the line. I mean, we haven't had the first high-profile gay footballer yet, right? We had the whole thing about the gay footballer. He had a Twitter account. Never came out. So I imagine there'll be a gay footballer first before there's a transgender footballer. But that leads me nicely into my next question. Now, could a female transitioning into a male survive a male locker room?
Well, I think they would have to be prepared. When you say survive, as in,
would
they be able to deal with it?
A male locker room for Americans, dressing room for the Brits, and I don't know the French or Spanish equivalents, right? That if you go into a dressing room or a locker room, it is probably the most alpha male place you will ever go in your life. Would they be able to survive in there?
They would have to. You're putting yourself in that scenario. They would have to.
A lot of people like to live in a safe space. They're like, look, I was always a man. But when you put them in amongst men who are actual, what you would call, quote unquote, men's men, how comfortable would they feel? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that's something that we don't directly have the answer to, but
I don't think they would survive in that environment. I think that environment would chew them up and it would spit them out.
In a team environment, possibly so, but this because they're not conditioned to that, right? But they would have to become conditioned to it. One thing is for certain, right? I don't know if you want to end on this or not.
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
But this is only the beginning.
Oh, this is the first chapter, let me tell you. We will revisit this as many times as you want. We've got plenty of... We could pull up 1 million articles on this and go on all night, but we're hungry, and Lord knows we've had a busy day anyway. But, just to finalise, your opinion, where do we go next? You feeling the trans games? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, so, as I touched upon, I think that is one of the only logical ideas that we have currently, right?
Mm-hmm.
In amongst not very many other logical ideas.
Yeah.
It just comes right back round to it.
It's the only logical thing I can think of, to be honest with you.
And sort of anybody that's listened to this episode, if you don't agree with what we're saying, then by all means constructively interact with us, right?
Yeah, look, don't be out here like trying to just take food off people's plates and money out of people's pockets. There's ways and means of discussing things.
Yeah.
If you disagree with us, please feel free to have a constructive conversation. The idea behind this podcast is we create dialogue. It's not to demotivate people in life. It's not to dehumanize people in life. It's not to ostracize people from society. It's designed to create dialogue and see how we all move forward. And that's it.
It's coming. This topic is coming.
Oh, look, this is coming huge. Closer than it's going to be sooner than people think.
So we may as well get ahead of the curve, right, and start speaking about it. So
well, look, plenty of people have been speaking about it. We wanted to have our say. We felt like now the time was right. Dave Chappelle did what I believe to be a very good stand-up where he mentioned it. If you go on Rotten Tomatoes and other sites, they will beg to differ. So God knows what they're going to think of this video. But, I mean, what does it actually mean to be equal? We'll end it on that. Let us know your opinions. I'm Rory Spooner. This is James Veck. This has been episode 49. Add us up on the social media platforms. We will be back next week with the regular stuff. Till next time, people. Take care. Ciao.